Our agenda today is the agenda review for tomorrow's regular board meeting and also the Weiss, Sirota, Helfman, Cole, and Bierman contract. So at this time, in an effort to stay on task, because we do have some board members who have commitments at 4 o'clock. So our goal is to stick with the time this afternoon. And at this time, if Dr. Atkins is ready, I will turn it over to him for agenda review. And welcome everyone. Thank you.
Let's see, Ms. Bruno has a question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, with regards to the agenda for today, pull the Weiss, Sirota, Helfman, Cole, and Bierman contract, because there are questions that have been posed that I am not able to answer those questions today. However, there is another part of that, which is with regards to the NPC funding that I would like to talk about, but not the contract.
Okay, so then we'll alter that Weiss, Sirota time for you to address the issues at hand, but not to review the contract. Thank you. Okay. If everyone else is ready, we'll proceed. Thanks, Dr. Adkins.
All righty, thank you, Madam Chair. I will go ahead and start the agenda review. So the first question I have is is under the consent agenda for academic services, approval of amendment 1 to the computer science certification grant FY20. And the question is, what are the budget amendments? I believe we're going to have a response from Miss Terry Kennedy down in our curriculum resources room. And if not, I can provide it.
Okay.
Here she comes. There we go.
Hello, everyone. So you will see that there are a couple of items as far as computer science. So there's 2 computer science grants that came out this year. And what happened after they came out is we had additional allocations. So I think there was additional 2 or 3 allocations given, and then we had to rewrite the plan, because the plan is, the intent of the grant is to provide computer science certification for additional staff. And we had planned on training to be done. We did send we sent 38 teachers earlier this year. We were going to have additional training here on site. And of course we had to change all of that. So what we did with the grant and the amendments and the changes that you see there, it started out at about 290,000, and now it's closer to, it's over 300,000 total. So we're taking the 64 teachers and providing training for them online. And then the remaining funds are going to be used towards a stipend for those teachers that complete that training and also register for the test. So you'll see the 4. So that's the one grant. The second grant, that's a smaller grant of 16,000. That is specific to those that already are teaching classes that are fit in a certain course code. If they're teaching a certain computer related course code and they have industry certification, they get $500. If they have the actual computer science certification, they get $1,000. And that's specific to the verbiage on the grant. So those are the 2 computer science grants.
Thank you.
All right, and Ms. Kennedy will help us out with the next question, which is E3, approval agreement with the School Board of Seminole County East Coast Technical Assistance Center. And the question is, East Coast Technical Assistance Center, Title I Technical Assistance copy to Jeannie LaFountain. Is she not retired? So we are trying not to have her retire. We'd love to have her, but I'll let, okay, I guess Dr. Spiro is going to take that question for us.
I'm only going to take the first part of the question and then let Terry talk a little bit about the details, because this also goes into some other questions later. So Jeannie is retiring at the end of this month, and we are going to be taking her duties in the area of Title I and migrant education, and those are going to fall under the responsibility of Terry's current position of the Director of Grants. That's why you saw the updated job descriptions come through. And so that's the only thing that's changing in her role, which is why now Terry is going to talk a little bit why she is now involved in this particular process. Terry?
Thank you.
Hello again. So in trying to work with all the various grants, we're trying to consolidate so that we can make sure that we maximize the dollars. And EdTech is the actual contract, and they are they give a lot of help with all of the federal grants that we have. And so Jeannie signed as far as the contract, because it needed to be signed now, but we've already had conversation with EdTech. I've sent all of the updated contact information. I've already participated in multiple webinars, and I have also had communication with our Title I. We have a new program director for Title I at DOE, and I've had conversation with her along with Oscar and Jeannie, but so we're transitioning together.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so that brings us to the next question, which is, this one is E18, but it's currently E16. We had some changes in the agenda and moved some of those items down to public hearing. So anyway, it's approval of the Head Start and Early Head Start supplemental funding request. So the question is, what is happening with the Lehigh Head Start program? So Tiffany Franklin, I believe, is going to provide a response.
I am. Hello. What is going on in Lehigh is when we went to rewrite our grant for this coming year, we had initially asked for $6,000 in startup cost, but then they asked us to rewrite that into a one-time supplemental request, which is what was sent through to the board for approval. And so that will fund the renovation of one of our portables for an infant toddler classroom and moving in and renovating another portable for infant toddlers in Lehigh.
Okay, then there was just another comment that went with that. It really wasn't a question. It says grants show as budgeted. I have asked not show it as budgeted because it is confusing to see funds that are pending a grant approval. So we'll take that comment under consideration.
Okay.
Okay. Then I'll move on to.
Can I make a comment on that? Because that was my question. Madam Chair, may I say something? Okay. I was just saying
Yes, Ms. Gittens.
Thank you. I was just saying that in regards to grants, it is confusing when it says it has a budget, and I brought this up before, that it has a budget. It's in the budget, but it has no effect on the budget. And when people outside of us that don't hear all the explanation look at it, it looks like it's an increase rather than just all a grant.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm asking to, have that kind of specified so people don't think we're spending this amount of money. Thank you.
Okay.
Did you want me to? I would agree with you that when the amendment came through, it is kind of confusing that it's additional funds. And so maybe clarity when we're writing it in there for you as well.
All right. Thank you. So if we're okay, we'll move on to the next one then. Consent business services. This is approval of the monthly budget report for the period ending April 30th, 2020. The question is East Lee Capital Project ? That would be Dr. Desimores is going to handle that one for us. Dr. D.
Hello. So just making sure of what the question was referring to. I see that in the capital budget report, there is a line item for East High School MMM. There's nothing there that says East Lehigh. That's East County MMM, which is Gateway High School, and it reports the budget and expenditures for that project. So is that answering the question? Is that what the reference was to, or was it to something different?
Board members?
Let's,
Yeah, I think it was Ms. Gibbs that asked the question, so I'm just giving her a
Ms.
second to
Gittens,
look.
please unmute yourself.
I'm trying something I did, and now you guys are in a little corner. Okay, I'm sorry, I was leaning over. This is the one about, which number was it again? F2?
yes, ma'am, F2.
Okay, so, Dr. Desimore, you're saying this is not Lehigh Senior, this is where?
If I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at, the line item says East High School MMM, which is Gateway High School. But I'm wanting to make sure you and I are looking at the same thing. So where exactly are you looking on the agenda item that brought up the question?
Okay, and now I don't have it pulled up. So I will come back to it and then I will get with you rather than to waste time for the rest of the board. But I will get back with you individually if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I think what you were looking at was on F2, that capital projects monthly review report. There is a line item on there that says East High School MMM. When you saw East High School, you might have thought it was referring to East Lee, but it was not. It was for Gateway High School, which is the budget and expenditure so far for that project.
Oh, okay. Yes, that was the one.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you.
And then there's a related question. How much did the district pay for Lehigh Senior Edition? I thought it was all grant funded. This is for Dr. Desimore's as well.
So the project, the approved project cost for Lehigh Senior was $13,086,000. There's no grant associated with the Lehigh Senior Edition. It was funded through a COPS, and the payment of that COPS will be made through the sales tax money. So the sales tax money is essentially how the Lehigh Senior Edition is funded, and that project cost again was a little over $13 million.
So that is in our cost of COPS right now, we're paying on that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Because I thought, well, maybe I was wrong. I thought that there was some ROTC grants that were part of that as well, is what I was told. And so it was not. It was just all of us out of the tax money.
It was all, we structured a COPS for the Lehigh Senior Edition, and the payment for that COPS will all be out of the sales tax funds.
So how are we going to address that now with and I guess it's a futuristic question that we have to wait and see how that's going to look with our funding, with the sales tax funding coming up.
Well, all of the things that we've already committed. So for sales tax, the first priority was our addition of student stations. So that's already been committed to. So we have to first and foremost utilize those sales tax funds in order to fund those projects or those schools that we said we were going to build with our sales tax proceeds. So then the remainder, where that budget reduction, where we're really going to feel that impact, are other projects that we might have had with scheduled sales tax, the maintenance type projects.
So okay, no, I get it now, because it's COPS to pay for it, and that's how we're doing it, and paying it ahead rather than waiting for those sales tax funds to come in.
Well, one of the things that the COPS gives you the mechanism to do is to pay that over a period of time, right? We would just would have done and used just sales tax proceeds to pay for the addition. That is the whole lump sum. Basically, it's a pay-go, right? You have to pay it as you go, and by the time the project is complete, then it's completely and totally paid for. The COPS allows us to utilize our sales tax funding in order to pay for the project, but you can do it over the period of time. So the COPS is structured to be paid for completely in that 10-year window that we have our sales tax revenues coming in. So
but if we get less sales tax within that 10, that's the concern I have. It's probably another conversation, so go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the next question. But before I go there, I just want to say that we do have the ISOC committee report that's going to be coming up Thursday. They are going to be meeting, so that's I think I'm really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a really good report that does report on how our sales tax dollars are being spent. Next one, F15, approval to increase expenditures for the piggyback of Osceola County School District RFP, distribution procurement of food and non-food products for the Power Buying Group. And the question is 6 million change in vendor to U.S. Foods. Please provide savings amount projected. And I believe this one is also from Dr. Desimores.
Yes, thank you. So based on last year's volume, the projected savings based on that number would be about 82,000. And if we do additional volume over and above what we did last year, of course, those savings would be greater.
Thank you.
All right, next question is G, consent, human resources approval of the reappointments for the 2020-21 school year. And this is, again, the question is, where is Judy Johnson was one question, what's happening with Sherry Russ is the second question, and provide an update with on Vivian Gutierrez. All right, so I think the first two, Dr. Pruitt will update us, and then I'll defer to Ms. Dupree Bruno on the third one. Unless you want me to handle that one, I can do that as well, either, whatever your pleasure. So, Dr. Pruitt?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. In reference to Judy Johnson and Sherry Russ, their current status is that their contracts were allowed to expire.
And then the third one, Mr. Dupree Bruno, you want to, so you're off mic.
Thank you, Dr. Atkins. With regards to Ms. Vivian Gutierrez, the second review committee has met and has come to a resolution. A report is forthcoming to Dr. Atkins in terms of the recommendation for her.
All right. Seeing no other questions, I'll go ahead to the next item, which is G3, approval to revise 2 administrator job descriptions in academic services. The question is, what is going on with these 2 positions, or are they just updating job descriptions? The first one is the Title I Migrant Early Childhood Learning Services and Head Start programs. Dr. Spiro?
Thank you, Dr. Atkins. As I mentioned earlier, we shifted one area of responsibility, which is Title I and migrant education, under Gary Kennedy's role as the Director of Grants. As we think, as some people are transitioning, we have some retirements, we're looking at having our grants department really have oversight of our title funds money to make sure that we are using the funds in the most effective way, to make sure we're not duplicating any services across the district as well. So it's going to be important that we have one really point person on that, and that's what the updated job description is for. The other questions that were asked in there were about how many students are at LAMP and how many at the Early Learning Center as well. And as of this morning, we have 70 girls at LAMP and we have 225 infants and toddlers at the Early Learning Center. And then there was an additional question about how many people are enrolled, how many people are under Mrs. Kennedy's department for grants. Prior to moving the Title I, the migrant education, there are 6 individuals. With the approval of these job descriptions, it would go from 6 to 16 individuals that would be under Ms. Kennedy in the Department of Grants. And yes, Ms. Kennedy is still over that department. There was a question asked if she was still the director, and yes, she is, and taking on really some additional responsibilities for us.
And there was one question I know that we wanted to get clarification on, is why are you updating it for certification now? And we wanted to know a little bit more about that question.
I didn't understand what that question was. If maybe we could elaborate about the certification component, because really the only thing that changed in there was just moved of the job responsibilities for Title I and migrant, had moved that was under Jeannie's job description and moved that under Terry. So the only change that we made.
Board members, comments or clarification?
So I just want to make sure I'm
Ms.
understanding.
Giovanelli?
Yeah, thank you. So it was my question, and in fact, I was just, because it looks like it wasn't prior, they didn't need to be certified prior to now they do. It's just kind of like you've updated that, just the job description, and I just wanted to get a little clarity on that. And then I did have, let me see, so, but prior to that, it wasn't required, or that was my understanding, right?
Well, you had to have the leadership requirements.
Okay.
As we begin to, anytime a new job description or we're changing a job description, we're putting it into that new format and we're aligning everything so that everything is the same across all job descriptions. But it was an administrative position previously and it still is. And so that requirement
Okay.
there. So,
Okay. That's why I just wanted to clarify. And then I want to jump back to the director of the Title I and migrant. And so that director is actually going to go under grants under Terry Kennedy, right? And then does I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, that's my fault. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Well, so that still leaves, that person will come to so they'll be housed at the district at this point. So that still leaves the principal there still has to be a principal over there at the early childhood, right? And Lance, right?
So we took Jeannie LaFountain's job description, which was Early Learning Center, as well as Migrant and Title I. We took the Title I and the Migrant part out of that director's job description. We added it to Terry Kennedy's job description as the director of grants. So it's been added to Terry's job description.
Added.
So now you just have a director of early learning, because that job, big five for the superintendents, that's going to be that individual sole purpose is really to oversee all of the early learning, PPK, all the Head Start, everything in the district. That way, that person's job. A meeting ago, Carol Frink was named as the principal of the Early Learning Center. So her responsibility is LAMP, Early Learning Center, taking care of that whole center area over there so that the director can focus on expanding pre-K opportunities across our district as we continue to serve the needs of our community.
So are we creating another position? That's really what I'm trying to find out.
No, this is not another position.
It's existing. We're just redefining.
Correct. We took Jeannie's position, just took Title I out, added it to Terry's. So there are two same positions added there.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, we'll move on. Wait a minute, Ms. Giddens has a question, and Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you.
Ladies, please raise your little blue hands.
It was up. It's been up for a while. I don't know where my blue hand goes. It doesn't show up.
Thank you, Dr. Atkins. I see Ms. Vaughn's, but I don't see yours. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
No, I just took mine down when I opened my mic. Sorry. Okay, so basically then on this position you're taking, and this is probably a Dr. Spiro issue if he's still in the room. So you're taking Jeannie LaFountain's position and taking the financial piece out of it and adding it to Terry's?
The time responsibilities for Title I and the responsibilities.
Just the financial piece.
All of everything that went along with that. So overseeing the Title I grant, the financials part of it, working with her staff on the grant itself, making sure those reports are turned in. Anything with Title I under that responsibility falls under Terry as well, in addition to the migrant education also.
So, and the Carol that was just appointed then still has like the academic side of the early childhood piece. Can I put it like that?
She does the Early Learning Center, and the LAMP. Both of those centers. That's where she has her energies focused at.
And do we have, Dr. Pruitt, what that looks like? Excuse me, for Terry's position now as far as cost-wise?
I mean, they're still director positions, so there's no change in the cost.
But, well, I mean, so you're adding this whole component to her director position, but she's not being compensated any differently for that?
That is correct. It is a director position.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I guess we're having trouble understanding this. So then there's an additional position that is the Head Start programs, meaning not the center on Michigan Avenue, but overall, any overseeing any Head Start that might be with our partners or at elementary schools. Is that correct?
Yes, Ms. Vaughn, that is correct. She had
And who is
for all the district-wide programs. That's what the director of early learning will focus in on, solely on all of those programs.
okay? And then who is that?
So that position has not been. That is a position that we will be doing a national search for. And
Okay, so we are adding a position.
no, it's remember Jeannie retired, so Ms. LaFountain retired. So we're going to fill that vacancy with her.
Okay, but I'm counting three things here. What Ms. Kennedy's going to be doing grants. And then we have a principal who is overseeing both LAMP and the Early Learning Center on Michigan. And then we have a director we're going to be looking for. So Jeannie LaFountain's job included the director, wasn't she? Didn't she have jurisdiction over our partners and?
Yes, that was her response. Yes, her responsibility was working with our community partners as well.
So we've really, added one person. Have we not? Because that was being done by Jeannie.
Right, no, ma'am. Remember that is Jeannie's position. I just took the Title I out of Jeannie's position and we added it to Miss Kennedy's position. I'm sorry, maybe I'm not understanding.
Or I'm not understanding. I'm seeing that we have somebody who's going to be, all right, let's put the grants aside. I understand that. So we have somebody who's going to serve as principal, is that the title, of the Early Learning Center and LAMP.
Yes, ma'am. That was.
And that's Jeannie did that.
Yes, Jeannie. There was an administrator at. There is an administrator at LAMP. There was an administrator at Early Learning Center.
Right.
Jeannie oversaw all of those programs as well.
Right. But we didn't have where I'm saying there's a third person, we didn't have a separate director, did we?
No, ma'am. That was still Jeannie. I think what you're saying is because
so that's what I'm saying. You not to contradict you, but I just wanted to make sure I understood. We are creating another position. I mean, it's not like this job wasn't done, but we are creating a director position to deal with our partners that are doing Head Start and all the other the schools, the elementaries that might have Head Start programs.
And I'm going to see if I can answer this differently, Ms. Vaughn. So Jeannie's position did all of that.
That's what I'm saying.
Maybe, all right, maybe Ms.
Who's on first?
Light me in here. Exactly.
There were, so we had one person, Jeannie, doing this, and now we're having two people. All right, somebody bail me out here. Is this?
As well as me. So are you, remember there was an administrator at LAMP. There was an administrator for early learning.
And that was Jeannie.
And then there was the director for early learning. So all of those positions, the administrator at LAMP, the administrator at early learning, and the director, all of those positions remained intact.
But now we have.
Only change we're doing was to one area of responsibility, and then advertising. We're going to advertise for Jeannie's retirement.
All right. Okay, I really understood that there were two different positions, principal and director.
I have a question from Mr. Giovanelli.
Yes,
All right, I'm done on this. I don't want to.
No, this one. So yeah, I mean, yes, the principal, I see what you're saying now. So the director position, which is Jeannie's position, and then you have the principal.
Only she wasn't called director, was she?
We always refer to her as a director down here. I don't know, I'll let Dr. What was her official title, I believe, was director, or was it under principal?
I'll have to look in PeopleSoft. We went,
It was
worked with it, so.
okay, are we clear, Ms. Vaughn? Jeannie's retiring, so they're gonna replace.
No, yeah, all that. Jeannie's
Okay.
retiring. She did all those jobs. And I guess what I'm trying to say is now there's going to be, beside Terry, the other jobs that are not migrant or Title I or grants are going to be done by one person or two people?
One person. So Terry Kennedy oversee, thank you. Terry Kennedy will oversee Title I. And so that's her job. So we're not adding another director to handle all Title I. The falls under Terry, and she will direct that work.
Yeah,
Get there?
we're having, I understand, I think. But
Jeannie's job description was, or is, to director. At this time, that's her title.
so she was also called principal, though, when she was at LAMP.
She served in the role of principal for overseeing all of those locations, but there was an administrator also.
Right.
An AP.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really familiar with LAMP, and I know it's always been LAMP and early childhood together, and before that, it was LAMP and ALC together once.
Yes.
All right, I'll see if we put somebody else, like two people.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Thank you.
I'm done.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jordan. And then Ms. Giovanelli, then Ms. Gittens.
Thank you. I was going to say, I definitely understand what Ms. Vaughn is saying, because it does look like you had this one person who had done so much, and now it's going to take three people to do this one person's job. So I think that's what, two people, but taking Ms. Kennedy away, so it'd be three total. So I get that, where the confusion is at.
Yeah, so I think the personnel remains the same, but the distribution of work responsibilities is different. There's been a redistribution. Okay?
That is accurate.
Thank you. Okay, and then Ms. Giovanelli?
Okay, so that was my question. So there will not be a principal per se. There will be an AP and a director.
No, there is a AP at LAMP. There's Carol Frank, who last board meeting
Right.
was named. And then now we have
Okay.
Jeannie's replacement, which is the director of early childhood. And yes, that's been added to Terry's workload.
Okay, so there won't be a principal at LAMP.
No, ma'am,
Oh.
just the assistant
Just
principal.
the AP Carol Frank.
No, the AP there is Rebecca Andrew.
Oh, right. So see, and she's going to stay the AP.
Yes, ma'am. And the principal is Carol Frank. Over
And
at the
Rebecca
Early
Andrews an
Learning Center.
AP though. She's the AP, right?
Yes.
Rebecca Andrew is, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So you got two APs, one for each, and then you're going to have a new director.
That's where you got the person. You know, you did have two APs, as I understand them, at each site. Now you have an AP and a principal.
Principal.
Okay, so the number of full-time employees is the same.
Okay. So who's the principal then? That's where that's who's on first, what's on second?
All right. Carol Frank is the principal of
Okay.
the Early Learning Center, who also oversees the LAMP, where Rebecca Andrew is the assistant principal.
Gotcha. Okay. And then thank you. That's what I was trying to.
We'll leave it there.
I'm sorry. So, and then I cannot click on raise hand. It won't work. Does anybody, Daryl, do you know why? I wanted to, I was trying to, it worked earlier. Now it does not work. I cannot, I'm clicking in and it doesn't work. So.
It just came on.
It did? No, I can't see that. Normally I can see the hand.
Yep, it's there now. Okay.
I can't see it on my side. So, okay.
Okay. As long as I can see it, I'll call you. And
Okay.
I'll pay close attention to people's faces also and their hands if they go up above their name tag.
So weird. I can't see it, but okay.
All right.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Spiro.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli and Dr. Spiro. Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Okay, so my question is though, Jeannie's job is being restructured and a major part of it is coming out, which is the finance and grants part of it. And I guess my question then is for Dr. Pruitt, when you look to the search for someone to fill Jeannie's position, are you restructuring that based on the fact that they are not going to be doing all of that, in fact, doing less?
Yes, ma'am. The search will be based on the job. If the job description is approved tomorrow, that will be the job description that we will use to conduct the national search.
So the job description coming to us tomorrow is the new one, the new Jeannie, and the new Terry.
Correct.
Okay. I'm on third. Thank you.
Okay.
Just remember one of the reasons for that, and it was mentioned earlier, but just to reinforce it, part of the Big Five is early childhood, and this allows us to really focus on early childhood education. So that's one of the major reasons for doing this. All right, if we're good to move on, then I'm going to move on to the approval of the revised FY20 administrative salary schedule. And the question is administrative salary schedule, articles left blank, 3, 4, 5, 13, and 14. School-based administrators deleted. That's one question. And then 10.09, changes in compensations, available funding. And then it was VAM, increased principal leads. Is there an assistant director of health services? And FY20 pay scale raises while making budget cuts, ? All right, so Dr. Pruitt is going to handle those for us.
Yes, and some of these were also asked in similar ways by some other board members, so I'm happy to answer those as well if I don't cover it during this portion. As we had talked about in the one-on-one meetings that we had back in February and then just most recently, to recap all of that, the administrative salary schedule is being brought to you primarily for the principal lead position, which was a new set of responsibilities for these principal lead positions. And that is why the increased compensation for that position. They actually the work is pretty much done already, but due to the fact that we needed to have that administrative salary schedule in order to have the authority to pay that increased amount, that's why we're bringing it forward. But in addition to that, what we also did was remove the language about the market rate for principals and assistant principals for FY21. And that primarily being the fact that we do not know what the financial situation is going to be when all is said and done. And so we were not comfortable committing to that without knowing the financial picture moving forward. You will recall, though, that back in June 25th, 2019, you did approve a 3.5% increase for all administrators except chiefs and executive directors. So, and that was, so for FY20, everyone except the chiefs and executive directors had an increase in compensation. We had the negotiated talc and SPALC, and then we mirrored salary schedule N and administrators based on the amount of funds that were available at that time. So that had already been approved, and it had been, put forth for FY20. In terms of the areas being left blank, Will Rothenberg and his team have done a really good job of trying to streamline and align all 4 of the salary schedules, if you will. And so that's just part of that alignment, because there are pieces that don't align relative to that, if that's what your particular question is. Relative to moving forward, at this time, we have no indications of what we're going to have, if any, for the, as I said, for compensation moving forward for the administrators. And so we're just not committing to anything at this time. Anything that we would bring forward, of course, would be done with board approval. And similarly, when we're ready to begin bargaining, we'll have that executive session where we'll review options and discuss what we do have available. And then relative to Assistant Director of Health Services, we have a coordinator at this time. That is the current position.
Thank you. I have a question. What data do you have that indicates that there is value in the principal lead's performance?
In terms of the position itself, or are you talking specific for this particular year, or?
Well, so we've had principal leads now, right, for 2 years. And so, yeah, so what are the indicators that that position is of value and warrants the increase?
Sure. From an HR perspective, there's a couple of things. One of them has to do with simply best practice with when you look at a reporting structure and having that number of administrators that are in each level. By having the principal leads, it just mirrors best practice of having a smaller number of people to help disseminate and communicate information relative to everything from expectations to performance to, all of those kinds of things. Anecdotally, I'll tell you that especially the newer principals and having that person and that lead in place has really been instrumental in helping them, kind of just be successful as a new principal. I'm not sure if Dr. Spiro wants to add anything from an academic services side, but again, just the 2 main things for HR is the best practices and then the support of the new principals.
Thank you, Dr. Pruitt. And I would echo, I believe the executive directors really would tell you they've been invaluable this year, especially they have been really a point person for our team during this whole COVID crisis. But even before COVID, they spent a lot of times in schools sitting, for example, in PLCs, professional learning communities. That was a big focus of ours this year, is deepening the work of PLCs and really trying to get that leverage point to help make a difference in schools. And so the amount of time that they spent working with all the principals that were under their leadership was a huge amount. And I really feel, and then, we can have some principal data to show you as well, that their impact and the support that they had to the success of their schools was tied directly to the support that they got from the principal leads as well.
Yeah, and I would echo that as a superintendent. The principal leads in terms of being able to provide communication feedback to even to me in my role, because if you think about the number of elementary schools that you're trying to get to and to get some really good feedback from 40 individuals versus having leadership that have that broken down, we can get a lot of feedback in a relatively quick period of time with the help of our principal leads. And they really help, I think, us be able to drive kind of Lee County way all the way from, top down and then from grassroots up. When there's concerns that folks have, they can share those concerns directly with principal leads without that concern that, it's coming from them per se, but instead the principal leads would share that with me in really a way that protects that that individual, or does it, in a protected manner where they feel safe to be able to share honestly. So I think also if you just look at even our results overall, I think that's why you have 0 DA schools, is because you've got these people that are really working carefully and closely with some of our new principals and even some of our veterans that to share those best practices, as was mentioned before. And then, before we even went down that road, we've done a lot of research. I think some of it I even shared with the board. I don't recall. I remember I shared something with you recently that was specific to that type of position being used in other districts as a best practice. So that there is research behind that. And again, I believe I shared that probably 4 to 6 weeks ago at this point.
Thank you very much. Okay. I see Ms. Gittens and Ms. Vaughn with a hand raised.
Okay, mine are quick. The new positions, is it associate principals? Am I saying it correctly, Dr. Pruitt?
Yes, we do not have any currently. You'll be getting a copy of our updated leadership and talent manual, hopefully by sometime during this week. And you'll see in there not only the job description, but the process document that shares how we anticipate having people request that type of position for their school. But we currently do not have any.
And what is the projection, if there is any, as to how many will be in place in the new school year?
I'm not aware of any that we have at this time, but based on some very initial conversations that we have had, we could potentially, I'm thinking maybe 1 or 2, potentially.
Would that be an existing AP moving into that position, or an AP from somewhere else coming into that, a new AP, or because then we're also looking at shifting once that comes into place, or if it's an additional position, that's another story.
So good questions. We would anticipate, and our thought process on this would be existing AP at a location who would be someone who is already in the principal pool, so they are ready to become a principal, and they would sort of take on that role and kind of what I look at as additional responsibilities relative to, it could be for a couple of reasons. It could be because the principal maybe is a principal lead and or has other responsibilities that takes them out of the building, and therefore that associate principal would then sort of be the principal during those times. It also is something we envision being available to some of our at-risk and vulnerable schools, so that it would sort of provide that, person in waiting or training, if you will.
So it's not necessarily someone that's at that specific school right now.
I mean, when the two things that I'm potentially thinking of, those would be situations where I would anticipate the best candidate would be somebody that would be at that school because they would have that experience and that knowledge. But we would certainly vet that and go through our normal process for hiring for that.
Okay, and my last quick question is, I've gotten several comments and questions from the community when they saw that the addition in salary, and their main question is are admin employees getting a raise? How would you answer that based on the configuration that's in our handouts?
Yeah, I would say at this time there is no. We haven't discussed raises for any employee group at this point, simply because, again, we don't know what the budget picture is going to look like, and until the governor signs on the dotted line and we have a better indication of where we are, we haven't had those conversations at all. So, and my response would also be that anything would be have to be brought to the board for approval.
So this that's on there for tomorrow is just projection and not necessarily to fill, to do that right now?
No, that's correct. I mean, there's nothing in there that gives a raise or does anything like that at all.
Well, okay.
Oh, with the exception of, if you're looking at the principal lead supplement,
Oh, yeah.
a principal lead supplement, which is part of the FY20 budget, not the FY21 budget, FY20 budget. And again, that has been discussed with the board both in January and then very recently. So, but in terms of an overall raise for administrators for FY21, Dr. Pruitt is absolutely correct. That is something that until we get more indication in terms of what our budget is going to be, we're taking a very conservative approach. And I know she's postponed negotiations at this point. So, there's nothing in terms of compensation we feel comfortable about negotiating right now until we have more information.
Well, I think they're looking at that last page of that one document that has the daily rates, and it's FY19 and FY20. I think
Right, that's this year. That reflects the raise that happened that you guys voted on June 25th, 2019.
So this is what they've already gotten. Okay.
They've been gotten it this whole year, yes.
All right, that's what was confusing. To have
Okay,
this in there.
yeah, I apologize.
It look like, look what we're doing, and everybody didn't necessarily look at the 2019 and the 2020. So it looked like a raise.
Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, no, that was from a year ago.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens and Dr. Pruitt. Ms. Vaughn? And then J.K.
Thanks. I'd like to come back again to the role of the principal leads. Our principals in Lee County really enjoy a great deal of autonomy, and I do understand that different areas of the county, they have very different clientele, very different demographics. So that's important. However, it's been my observation that many of the principals like to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. I think Dr. Atkins just mentioned the Lee County way. Is there a how would you characterize the principal lead in terms of reporting things like, well, we said that we were going to use this particular curriculum, but school XYZ is using a slightly different one, or all the principals were supposed to do the equivalent of preschool week for new teachers that came in afterward, but at school ABC, they're not doing that. So it's not solely, lead is not solely a mentor or counselor. Would the lead also give reports on, both negative and positive on principals that he or she is overseeing and those people are just not following? I mean, the school might be doing okay, but would that be their role? Would they report it to the superintendent? Would they report it to HR? Or would they report it to the executive director?
I would say that we hesitate to make it a gotcha position because we want it to be a mentor-mentee type of situation. But there is the issue of fidelity, and I know Dr. Spiro could definitely speak to this related to the academic plans and related to other matters. For example, I know with HR issues, I will have a lead that might make me aware of something, and then I will be the one that then contacts that principal and is more of the directive mode, if you will. I'm guessing that's probably the same in academic services. So yes, they do share information with us, but it was important that they communicate to their group of folks what is expected and the avenue with which to accomplish that, or best practices on how to accomplish that. And then for us as either executive directors or chiefs to then go in and be sort of the firmer hand, if you will.
Okay, and just as a quick follow-up, what is the ongoing philosophy from these schools regarding not just fidelity when it's with curriculum, but when people, let's say coordinators and directors and all work really hard on establishing, and I know this has happened in HR, establishing ways to onboard people and those kinds of things. And then you have some principals that just honestly feel that they can do it better, or they have different ideas. Or are we being pretty much laissez-faire in that because we want to give them a lot of rope and a lot of autonomy? Or are we moving a little bit tighter and closer so that we have more of a consistency? Especially, we're moving a lot of people from APs to principals or AP to AP at another school. And I can see where as teachers and administrators move among the schools, that it might be kind of a difficult transition. So what is our philosophy on that? Do we have one?
Yeah, we do have one. When I came into this position back in 2015, what I noted across the district is there was a lot of schools doing a lot of different things, particularly from a curriculum and a instructional delivery vantage point. And so one of the reasons that we do have our academic plans, our performance measurements or our assessments that we do is really to make sure that we are on the same page as it relates to instructional delivery. When I was in human resources, and Dr. Pruitt can certainly identify with this, one of the more frustrating things is when everybody wasn't following the Lee County way, as we called it. And so we talked about hiring the Lee County way so that people followed the proper process. So that's very, very important. And so still, realizing that we needed some help, that the executive directors were not able to do this all on their own, that we needed some help to drive down these guidelines to every single school. And that's, again, where the principal lead comes in, why they have additional responsibility, because what we've seen is as schools start to really come together around the fidelity of a particular program, academic program, that's where you see results. And, the more that we're delivering those programs with fidelity, the better the results are going to be. This applies across not just curriculum, but it also, you're talking about disciplinary procedures with students. You're trying to reduce the variance. So really, as large of a district as we are, we really think that this helps to break down those communication lines to a smaller level so we can communicate more effectively and provide feedback both ways.
Yeah, and I'm a big advocate for consistency, especially when the district works really hard to come up with best practice, and then someone believes, oh, I can reinvent the wheel. So I'm very happy to hear that, and I can see where it's kind of a slippery slope for the leads to maintain being a mentor kind of counselor, and yet when he or she sees something that needs to be reported to HR academic services. So I guess that Drs. Pruitt and Spiro get to be the bad guys at that point. So thank you.
All righty, thank
Thank
you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Giannelli?
I'll be quick.
Thank
So,
you.
Dr. Pruitt, real quick. So no executive directors and directors are not getting a raise increase as well as the administrators, correct?
Correct. Last year, all administrators, school-based, and district directors and district coordinators received 3.5% increase. That was for this whole FY20. And the chiefs and executive directors did not. And then moving forward, we've made no decisions or had no discussion about what it will look like for FY21.
Great, thank you. And then I do have one little question. And since I have you here, guidance counselors. I heard that guidance counselors are not working this summer. Is that because of COVID, or is that just a rumor? And that I was giving some wrong information.
Yeah, I'm not aware that there's been any changes to the school counselors' positions. They work, depending on how it is, they do have additional 5 days, and sometimes schools will work them, 2 days at the end of the year, 3 days at the beginning, or vice versa. And I'm not aware of any change to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Atkins, moving right along.
All right, so the next question is...
I was going to say, Dr. Atkins, I think we answered, unless there's additional questions, I think we have answered, except when we get to...
I think the administrator's on assignment is what I was
yes,
going to next.
Yes, right.
So question, go ahead.
Yeah, for FY20, we had 3 administrators on assignment. We had Mr. Mangan working in academic services, and we had Kim Brooks working in adult and career ed, and then we had Judy Johnson working in operations. Anticipated for FY21 would be 2. That would be Brian Mangan and Kim Brooks.
And the next one is, how is this cost effective, especially as they maintain their school supplements?
Don't necessarily retain their school supplements. This is evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and I'd really have to look into those 2 employees to see what the decision was moving forward for FY21, so I can get that information and let you know.
Then performance evaluation, appropriate policies, or school staff evaluation.
I'm sorry, could I follow up? Because what I don't understand on this, and actually it said maybe in that document that we were provided, it said they may be given their school supplements, but
let me respond, just so you know, when I say case by case, because it depends on whether we are asking them to take on some responsibility, and if we do that, will it result in a reduction in their salary when we're asking them to do something?
Okay.
As if they're placed because of, other reasons. That's why we say case by case, because we don't want someone to be financially harmed because we have asked them to take on something.
Okay, and I guess my big question, and it's always been my question, as I was reading about principal or AP on assignment, it seemed like, well, these were special projects that the superintendent needed somebody to do. But I believe, I don't know about Ms. Brooks, but Mr. Mangan, hasn't he been in his assignment pretty much the whole year? And so why are these administrators on assignment if there's a job that's not just, here's something we need done and it's short term? Why are they just not placed in existing coordinator or director, I guess might be a more appropriate role? Why is that? Why do we even have this role. You know, I mean, in the case of Judy Johnson, I hate to say it, but it almost seems like it was a placeholder, needed to put her somewhere until her contract ran out. I guess how cost effective is this whole thing?
So again, they're case by case. And so if there are issues around the employee and issues around, you know, I'm trying to tread lightly here because they're personnel issues, but there are sometimes they cannot, either A, there is not an open position to put them in, or B, we are waiting and to see for the next budget year what we're going to be doing.
But that's my point exactly. That makes it seem to me that it's some kind of placeholder and, you know, like, okay, we'll just give them something until something else comes up. And it just makes me want, and I'm not trying to pick on these individuals. This has always been something that I've thought about. Like, why does that exist? If we really need that function, do we not have a position to put that person in?
Yeah, sometimes we just don't have a position available and they cannot remain in the position that they were in. And so sometimes it is a placeholder until the end of their contract because, you know, when you reappoint them, they are entitled to that contract for a year until and unless there is some board action that removes them from that contract. And so there are times when it is exactly what you're saying. It is a place, and so we're still providing them with job functions that allow them to contribute to the district while they're being paid, but it cannot necessarily be in the position that they were in.
And I think we've been, you know, we try to be very judicious in the numbers that we use here. You know, the numbers that we have, what I've seen this district do in the past compared to what you're seeing today are very different, very low. I think in the case of, you know, Mr. Mangan, there's certainly responsibilities there that, if you recall, there had been an executive director that was in that role, and so you've got him going into that and picking up many of those responsibilities in his current role there as it relates to student services and Derek hearings and that type of thing, graduations. So, I mean, I do hear you. I understand the concern. We are very, again, we try to be very careful with those positions, and we also try to make sure that we're communicating with you as we're doing those, making those decisions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Giovanni, is your hand still up or did you put it up again?
Just one question, because that led me to, like, that's what, like what Ms. Vaughn was just saying. For me, I was curious why, so Mr. Mangan has been in, why we're now transferring people and moving people around. There's been openings and principalships, so why wouldn't he just step into one of those roles at the, you know, one of those openings that opened up? Because we had a lot of people retire, so why wouldn't he just fill one of those positions versus, you know, promoting and that kind of thing at this point in time? So that's my curiosity.
I think at this point, because we had that one vacant position, you know, he's taken on a lot of those responsibilities in that position. So, I mean, if anything, my recommendation on that one would be to just review, you know, the district job descriptions and put him into a position that would be commensurate with those responsibilities that he's currently conducting. In most cases, in many cases, though, what you just said, you know, we do look for an open position in the case of like assistant principals and principals that are displaced, and try to put them into those positions as well. So there's a little bit of both of those things that go on. And again, we try to keep you in the loop on that as best we can.
Okay, I think the next one was about the performance evaluations. Our school staff evaluation surveys, part of the school administrator evaluation. They're not formally part of the evaluation. However, the executive directors do review that information with them. Now we were there was a year gap that we had relative to that, but those are shared. And I know that we've had several discussions about if we could find funding, we would love to have a 360 evaluation that would be potentially part of the evaluation, but that's always comes down to a funding issue because it's very expensive to have a reliable 360 evaluation completed. And that has really been the roadblock to us having that as part of their evaluation. Was there any questions or comments about that one?
I think Ms. Vaughn has a question.
Yeah, that was my question. And Dr. Pruitt, I think you and I have talked about this in the past. And yeah, I recall now you're mentioning the cost that's associated with it. But you know, certainly if some schools have it and the executive directors are looking at just some and not others, I don't know how legitimate that is. But anyway, that was my question, and I surely would love to see the staff be able to give honest input. Thanks.
Yeah, and I feel like we continue to get better and more feedback as employees understand that it truly is anonymous and that it's the information is shared in aggregate so that it cannot be identified who the particular employee is, because I think that's always a concern by an employee of, you know, is someone tracking down my IP address and so forth. So we continue to work on that and improve that and, you know, and provide that feedback.
But it's been a good piece of information, I think, for us, and usually take those surveys and you compare them with other data points, and all of that collectively is used by that supervising administrator. And, you know, as a result, we, Dr. Pruitt's first group that's had principals on improvement plans, which I think has made a difference in performance.
Yeah, and honestly, we're, you know, now where the administrators, you know, they really want that feedback. And if you may remember, we've changed the timing of it so that, you know, it is relative to where they can still make changes in that school year if the feedback comes back in a way that shows that, you know, we're 2 months in and things aren't going well, so, rather than at the end of the year when it's still good information, but the year's over. So, you know, you can make improvements for the next year, but I'm very happy with the change of the timing of it and allowing principals more time to be able to address concerns that their staff is sharing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pruitt. Okay, board members, it is now 2:14 p.m. We're about 14 minutes over time, and we do have 3 board members who have commitments at 4 p.m. So are we finished now, Dr. Atkins?
I have one more on mine that I'll do very quickly, Ms. Fisher.
Thank you very kindly.
Yeah, that's around turnaround principles. We have 5 in this school year. We'll have 6 next school year. The question about how that's designated, that's outlined in the administrative schedule for you there, but the turnaround, the characteristics for a school include student population, staff population, meaning how many new teachers, the staff composition, the academic history, unique school challenges, and school location. And so those are the factors that are included on that relative to being a turnaround. And that's all for HR.
Thank you. Dr. Atkins.
Madam Chair, just a couple more items that are related to the agenda, so maybe if we could do that, and then I will just make a comment about some of the other items, because maybe we would want to respond to those in a different format. So I do have operations, I-8, approval of the RFP relative to towing services. So the question is, please update on status of the white fleet. And I would assume this is related to towing services. So Dr. Savage is going to handle that one.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. The question, please update on the status of the white fleet. And the response is that these are towing services. And it's not just for the white fleet, it's also for the school buses. So all of these are considered part of our fleet, our transportation fleet, and that's what this is for. It's a budgeted services annually. We expended at the time that this was put on the agenda up to about $35,000 this year since August for these services. And this is just simply to renew the final year of that existing contract. So that's the only piece pertaining to the white fleet in this board item. If there's anything else additional to it that's not necessarily this board item that pertains to white fleet, be happy to provide that at a future time as well.
Okay, thank you. I see Ms. Gittens has her hand raised.
Well, it was my question. I recall something, I don't even remember when, about there was discussion about the white fleet and a possibility of lessening or making it smaller or whatever. I don't know where that is, and that's why it triggered me to ask that question. Have we, over the last year or so, looked at that and looked at any cost savings in not having as much? And basically, that's what I'm asking.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Yeah, that's definitely a question beyond the scope of this board item. That said, it is a very timely thing that you bring up, because anytime we can improve our efficiency in the organization, we'd love to do that. And the white fleet certainly is always an opportunity. It's a tremendous level of vehicular assets that we review. I actually did have one of our staff, Ms. Kirchen, do a pretty comprehensive analysis the last 2 months on our white fleet. And there's just a lot of data she collected, and it's still underway. There's just a significant level of information, hundreds and hundreds of vehicles. And so there's just a lot to that I can't really answer in this exact moment, but we'd be happy to put together some information for a future, whether it's a workshop item or just information we can put into your board weeklies. We'd be happy to provide some additional information along that vein.
Just on a higher level. We don't need to get way down deep in it, but just kind of how many we have and the cost factors and that type of thing, and projections for the future. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And hold on, Dr. Savage, I see Ms. Patrica with her hand up.
Just to, I recall that conversation as well, Ms. Gittens. I think it took place in the context of the RSM risk assessment, and it is one of the items that one of the 10 items. And I think that's as we look at RSM and figure out the work we want to do going forward, I think that would potentially be on them if that's something we decide to do. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Board members, any other comments regarding that? Thanks, Dr. Savage. Dr. Atkins?
Okay, last one related to an agenda item, approval of the expenditures for the RFQ, continuing contract for roofing consultant services. The question is, where is documentation for contract? So that's Dr. Desimores, I think, has a question about that question.
Here she comes.
Yes, just thinking, I'm not sure what documentation this refers to, but maybe a little explanation on the agenda item will help. So really what this agenda item does is it approves the list of contractors that we can work with once specific projects under the specified dollar amounts are identified. So this particular agenda item isn't for a specific project, but rather the vendors will work on for future projects of this type, in this case, roofing. So does that potentially answer the question?
Ms. Gittens, was that your question?
It was me. And yes, is this one of the ones where we have several companies to choose from, and they're all on the books, and we can choose the best one for that particular job. And I guess I was just saying too, there's not a contract or any information with it. Is there a contract, or is it normally we don't have it with these, or what?
Dr.
Yes, so, yes, that's right. So you're asking, is this where we have, a list of people that, a list of contractors that we can work from? And the answer is yes. This is under each of those continuing contracts. There's one RFP that is done where basically all of the contractors that want to respond to that do. And then based on their responses, we choose a list of them that meet the criteria that we can work with. And then we work with them on a rotational basis for each of those types of projects that we will do throughout the year.
Okay, so is that why you don't have listed a contract? Because it could vary from any one of them, correct?
That's exactly right. So each individual project, depending on what that project is, once we get a project for the year, we'll get the next vendor up on the list. We'll agree with them on the specifications and price of that project. And at that point, the project moves forward.
Is there some place that we can find if we needed to, or just ask you if we wanted to see a contract based on this, or no?
Well, for each individual project, yes. So once the individual projects are identified, if you wanted to know the projects and the cost related to each of the projects that would fall under the continuing contracts when they come, yes, we could provide those.
So let's say there's 3 companies in this particular one, is there any way to show that within that year we did do this much business with each one, and this is how much we spent? I think that's what. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, we could provide that if that's what you were looking for. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I have a question, Dr. Decimo. Would that information then be part of what we get when we get our updates from Mr. Rickenbacker and maintenance and building? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it could be part of that, that construction project update. We certainly could incorporate that in there if that's what you want, if that's what the board was desiring. Yes.
Can I just say the reason I was asking for it in the way I just did is going forward with equitable use of contractors and all of that, to be able to say there's 3 on this particular RFQ, and over the year we've only used this one, as opposed to we've used this one and this one, and kind of, keeping us above board. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Great point. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Okay, Dr. Atkins, moving along.
Okay, Madam Chair, those are all the questions that were aligned or were focused on the board agenda. I do have some additional questions. If you would like, I know we're working on getting answers for some of those, some that we do have some responses, but we can certainly put that in the board update if that's okay with you to preserve time.
Okay, yeah, I get that works for me unless you think there's anything that needs to be handled right this minute.
I didn't see anything on there that was necessarily an urgent, just a lot of, questions about like the Prevention Center and Success Academy and numbers of students, things that would fit well, I think, in our board update.
Thank you. I think that would be an efficient way to handle it, and I appreciate that. Okay. So now moving on, does anyone need a break, or should we just go for the gust? Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we will resume with Attorney Bruno and the Weiss-Serota in issues.
Only if we can see the baby, Debbie. Oh, look at that chunky.
Stop feeding him so much.
I need a break.
Mr. Vinelli, take your break.
Oh, wow.
will resume our workshop meeting, keeping in mind that we plan to end promptly by 4 so that people can be available for their other commitments. At this time, I will turn it over to Attorney Dupree Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, we are asking for an increase in the balance, in the budget, with regards to Vice Sirota. There is a balance that needs to be paid that represents the April and March bills. As the board may recall, on April 23rd, let me go back to the PowerPoint. Next slide, please, Mr. Eldon. The board approved the contract on November 5th, 2019 with a term from November 1 through April 30th. And it was funded through the attorney vacancy salary account, and the budgeted amount was $225,000. Next slide. So the expended dollar amount for the invoices dated November 1 through February 29th was $206,590.28, with an outstanding an outstanding balance of $107,959.82. There was an issue with regards to the COVID-19 emergency, which led to an opening of a different account, and that exceeded the flat rate by $32,979.80. The PO balance was $18,409.72, and there's now a negative account balance of $89,550.10. So we need to increase that account by $89,550.10.
Okay, board members, any, okay, I'll start with Mrs. Morgan and then move on to Ms. Jordan and Mrs. Gittens. Ms. Morgan?
At what point did we approve a separate account for COVID-19? And why is that not a normal course of business transaction? That's my first question. I may come back with others. Thank you.
So my understanding was that, I guess, an email was sent in March requesting the account to be open, and that's really all I know with regards to that.
Okay. Ms. Morgan, does that answer your question or? Okay, thank you. And then Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I was going to ask the same question. And also, in addition to that, is that our bill? Because I know sometimes they were doing some work for the other side, if you will, not the board attorney, but the other attorneys. So is it our bill or is it the district bill? If that makes sense.
That's a good question. The only thing that I can answer is just based on the emails that I have. Obviously, I was not here during this time. And the only thing I can tell you is that a separate account was opened up for, excuse me, for the COVID-19 emergency response, which was they saw it as a novel legal issue. So, and it has come to the board attorney's office, not the other side.
Okay, because I just know that in the past that both sides have utilized them for different aspects. So I was just trying to figure out who, does that really belong there or does that belong somewhere else? Thank you.
So, okay, thank you, Ms. Jordan. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, I was going to ask, I don't know if we can go further. In my opinion, I need to know more details about that as to who, what, why, when, and where that was done and who authorized it. Did it come before us at all? I mean, I really was unaware of that. And what was the date? Ms. Dupree Bruno, do you have the date as to when that was initiated?
So it looks like an email. There was a question, I guess when the bills came in, there was a question asked to the COVID-19 separate account. And then an email was sent explaining that this account was open and it was done in March. So that's the best that I can tell you at this time with regards to that. I know that
after the 13th?
It was like March 18th, there was an email that was sent that basically says that due to the extraordinary and unique nature of the public health issue, we are going to open up a separate billing file for the emergency response matters.
Well, can we have Dr. Atkins, or can you have Dr. Desamore speak to where and why this occurred? Because I think that was during the time that we were in the emergency situation.
I don't believe we had knowledge of that. I could be wrong. I don't know what email you're referring to, and I don't think Dr. Desamore's does either.
Board Chair, if I may interject, this is Johanna.
Yes.
Okay, so my understanding is that an email was sent to Ms. Fisher on March 18th explaining the extraordinary circumstances related to the COVID-19 pandemic. That email was then shared with all board members. And in April, when I received the invoices, I questioned the amount of those invoices, and I sent an email to John Quick requesting an explanation. And the email that he sent to me on April 28th explained the increase in those invoices. And I have shared that information with all board members.
Thank you, Johanna. I appreciate that. And I don't know, Dr. Atkins, if Mr. Williams or someone on his team might be able to provide the answer, since it was before Ms. Bruno took her seat as the board attorney. In the meantime, Ms. Giovanelli. Ms. Giovanelli, please unmute. I'm trying.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I would like to know what they did for those services. Is that detailed in what Johanna sent to us?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go look for that email again. And I mean, it's been quite some time, so.
And it was resent as well. It was resent today. So.
Oh, okay. So
invoices were sent and then we resent them today as well.
Okay. So, because I mean, can I ask the Kathy Dupree Bruno to look at the contract that we signed for the year at 225 and why? I mean, they were under contract from March to May, so I don't understand how this would be something different due to the state of emergency. I mean, so I would want to defer back to the contract and see what that, details and how that, because I'm concerned over the initial contract. So that would be my question. Okay. And I'm going to look at the other invoices.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. Ms. Patrica and then Mrs. Morgan.
I think I share the board's concerns here. I don't really have an understanding of, first of all, I don't get the numbers. Let me pull up if we're looking at $33,000 response, why are we $90,000 in the hole? That doesn't make sense to me. And how do these services fall outside from what I understand, we had a flat fee agreement with them. So what services specifically fall outside of that flat fee? I've quickly reviewed the invoices that were forwarded today. I just did a quick look back on April 28th. I don't see anything in my email from April 28th from Weiss Sirota. So I'd like copies of those emails to which you're referring, please, Attorney Dupree Bruno, along with, I don't know if we have a conversation or if you want to do the analysis and tell us what you think falls inside the flat fee agreement and what falls outside the flat fee agreement. I can't approve this without a lot more information.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan?
Agreed. So I need to see how expenditures were incurred over the contract amount beyond the COVID-19. And I'd also like to know is the fact that somebody sent an email saying they were setting up a separate account implied consent on our part that we were going to pay an additional fee. I mean, to me it was, okay, so we're identifying for you what's attributable to COVID-19, but that doesn't tell me that the intention is to go ahead and charge us for that service. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and now Ms. Gittens, and then I'll turn it back over to Attorney Bruno.
And I agree pretty much with everyone. I guess on Ms. Morgan's last statement, though, and from the 13th for the next couple of weeks, I guess, we were not, the emergency policy was in place. So it was under, the superintendent had all control at that point. And I don't know if that was the reason that it didn't come to us and it just went to staff. But when you say opened another account, in other words, under a different name to charge us under
a different billing number. Because they had different billing numbers for different things that they were working on. So they had the flat fee, they had real estate, they had labor, they had different billing numbers for different areas. And this was a different billing number.
Okay, and then my question would be, so during that time frame, they were already on contract with us for the flat fee. Was this something outside the scope of what was already on the contract? So I agree with everyone that Ms. Dupree Bruno, if you could, attorney, if you could look into it and get back to us and find out the who, what, why, and get back to us, because I really can't make a determination myself unless I have more information. Thank you.
Okay, so board members, what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention, I just found the email, and it was from John Quick to Brian Williams, Chief Legal Counsel, myself, with a copy to Mr. Bierman and Ms. Daniels. And it just says, due to the extraordinary and unique nature of this public health issue, we're going to open up a separate billing file. And I did, I forwarded that to all board members. So that was all that was said. And honestly, I didn't follow up further with that, but I would imagine that Mr. Williams then would have further information about the interpretation. Okay, Ms. Bruno.
So what I'm going to do is go ahead and then speak with Mr. Williams, review the contract, review the bills, and speak to Mr. Quick, and then come back to the board with a recommendation.
Okay, will that be satisfactory to all board members? It is to me and Ms. Morgan, Ms. Patrica. Okay, so unanimously, and with the exception of a comment from Mrs. Giovanelli.
Well, and I would so normally we would have received something like that. We would have deferred to our attorney. That's who they were. So why wasn't that explained to us in further detail? Like, what you just read is not really very clear on what we're to perceive. I mean, so I think, they're our attorneys. They were our attorneys at the time. So they should have pretty much communicated what they were trying to do or what they're, I mean, I don't think we're supposed to read between the lines here.
Right, no, and I think that communication was an indication that that was something separate from our contracted flat fee because of the emergency situation.
But I think they should have been clear on that, and I don't believe that's clear.
Well, then that's why Attorney Bruno will speak with Mr. Williams and with Mr. Quick and then get back to us with more detail. If that, and is that okay? It's okay with everybody? Now Mrs. Giovanelli is in agreement, and then Ms. Jordan has a comment.
Thank you. I was just wondering too, because I'm going through all the emails as well. I know that they had drafted an emergency declaration resolution, and in that, the body of that, it says staff has asked me to draft it and have it back to them by noon. Being staff, I don't believe he was speaking on us. So that may be part of it. And I think even in their contract, it said something about COVID, how they would have different costs related to any work that they may have to do because of the COVID in that new contract as well. So this might be part of what we did not know about or we're looking for.
Thank you. Okay, any other further comments? If not, then Attorney Bruno will do her research and get back to us on that. Anything else, Attorney Bruno?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, so then are we finished then? We're not going to do the contract. Did you want to talk at all about that?
No, well, not really. There's some questions that were raised yesterday that I want to make sure that I vet thoroughly before I come back to the board to present it and make sure I can answer all of your questions. So,
thank you very much. Okay, then board members, if there is no other business, we'll do good of the order. And let's start this time with Ms. Morgan.
I have none, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
You've been receiving really good updates from Lauren Stillwell on the reopening of school task force, but just for anybody who hasn't read those or anybody watching and listening, in a nutshell, last Wednesday, Dr. Adkins talked about the governor's plan and emphasized that we still would have local control. Now, it's literally minute by minute. During our lunch break, I'm kind of a news junkie, I turned on the news and learned that Governor DeSantis is walking back some of the things that he has said. We are, I think Florida now, we're over 100,000. And I was looking during our lunch break, I was looking at graphic representations that showed Lee County above the Florida rate. And so it's almost like anything that we decide one day, give it 24 hours and it may change. That said, we had interesting presentations by staff. Dr. Spiro and Dr. Savage presented on a day in the life, and for those people who never taught, never went through a school day from the moment the child gets on the bus through going home and actually even after school activities. And then we also had some plans from HR, but it walked through all the various scenarios and considerations of what the student day was like. And again, a huge list of things that have to be taken under consideration. The task force has divided into 5 subcommittees. As a matter of fact, that's my 4 o'clock meeting. Today, I'm on the communication, which the staff member that chairs that is Irma Lancaster. There's one on workforce, health and safety, transportation, and instructional models. And what the subcommittees are tasked with doing is talking in the small group, and we'll meet today and next week, and we will be bringing recommendations to the large task force committee. And also anybody, and I know many of you are meeting with your school board advisory committees. Of course, the task force is also looking for any recommendations that may come out of that. I know I have my last time with the curriculum advisory committee. So if you're on an advisory committee and you're going to meet in the next week or two, get some input from them. And as I said, it's just it's a moving target, and we've had everything from people saying school needs to be open and it needs to be as close to normal as possible, to, oh no, don't do that, and everything in between. And we are, for those of you out there that have comments, questions, suggestions, then we have dedicated email address, which is reopening schools, all one, no dots there, reopening schools at leeschools.net. And we have a contact person. Actually, it's Cindy McClung is doing most of the answering, and will answer questions directly and compile questions, comments, suggestions for the task force. But it's going to be quite an undertaking, and we, with Texas and a few other places, San Antonio and Austin, Texas, are now hotspots. So we don't want Lee County to become more of a hotspot than some of our neighbors on the East Coast. But everybody out there, wear your masks. The numbers have gotten younger for COVID-19 infections, whereas it's mostly older people. The numbers are significantly younger now. And again, the data I saw when I was looking at that stuff during lunch was that Lee County, we are above the Florida average, which is, we're on that list as a state where the numbers are going the wrong way. So I hope whoever's next has some kind of really cheery. I did watch some of the, I'm sure most all of you did watch several of virtual graduations, and as I have time, I'll watch more of them. So that's kind of cheery, but what can I say? That's the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Gittens, go to the order and comment.
Yes, and one of the things is a question for Ms. Vaughn. You mentioned the that Ms. McClung is creating kind of a collaborative of the Q&A from the community. Is there any way that that's available, that we can kind of see what types of things are being asked?
Sure, I bet if you just ask her, or I can ask her. Okay. And see what you know, and some of them are things that we actually have received ourselves. But no, I could see what we can get that can easily.
Or if there's a place when they do the meetings and they posted or something, then maybe we can look at it then.
It's, some of the questions I know are in chat, and they're brought up in different ways. And of course, as with most of the issues or things that are hot topics for us, there are a lot of questions that are somewhat redundant, that, you know, like a category of questions. But I'll definitely ask and see.
Well, that's why I was thinking to look at her, you know, list of them, because she will have scrubbed by then.
Right. She's the facilitator for the task force. So I will definitely ask her and see what can be fitted.
And the other question, I guess, to Madam Chair would be, I believe we had talked about going back to the boardroom in July. And based on all of this, where are we with that right now?
Well, as far as I know, we're anticipating returning to the boardroom on July 27th. And then again, that will probably be up to, you know, what happens in between now and then. And I mean, it looks like it's a wait and see at this point, but that's my understanding. And Ms. Bruno?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Madam Chair. I have a question for the board. The requirement is that we have a physical quorum. I would like to know how many board members are willing to be part of that physical quorum, and how many are thinking that it would be better for them to continue to participate virtual. So if I can have a response to that, you can send it to me in an email or something like that, so that we can kind of gauge. All board members do not necessarily have to be at the meeting. We just need to have a physical quorum.
Thank you. Okay. Board members, please respond to Attorney Bruno regarding your personal preference.
Okay, can I finish my?
Yes, Mrs. Gittens, please finish.
Okay, and one other thing, and I'll bring it up tomorrow, but I just wanted to make board members aware that in working with Dr. Atkins and Dr. Spiro and Desamore, we are going to have an exploratory meeting on this coming Thursday. It will be virtual, and with a group of citizens in the Eastern zone. And it is nothing, we will be meeting to talk about if this is something we want to continue. And if so, then I will bring it to the board and say, this is what the community would like to take forward. So in case you do hear that we're having a meeting, it is basically an exploratory to see where do we go from here, or do we go anywhere from here? So there is nothing formal or formalized with this. It's basically a community meeting at this point, and I will get back to you afterwards to let you know the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, is that open to your entire district, or are there specific members?
Yeah, it's a select group of community individuals right now, just to start out. One of the things that we'll talk about is who else should be on it, or who should be on it, or that type of thing.
Great, thank you.
I think Ms. Jordan is the question for me regarding this.
Okay. And actually, Ms. Jordan is next. So if you're finished, Ms. Gittens, I will move it on to Ms. Jordan. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did want to ask a question though regarding that meeting. Who is actually putting the meeting on? The district is putting it on, or you as an individual? And inviting, yeah.
It's a collaborative effort with just some of the district staff, the superintendent, some of the principals from out in the east part, from Alva to Lehigh, not just Lehigh, business people, community people. And like I said, it is just an opportunity to see if indeed we want to move further and formalize a group.
Okay, so who is the person who is, you're just sharing this information, but you are not the person who is actually putting this together?
Oh, no, in conjunction with the superintendent and Dr. Desamore and Dr. Spiro, yes, we put it together.
Okay.
I'm not sure what your question is.
No, I was just wondering how, it seems like the district, every time I see something that's on the district and it's out in East, I'm going to say East, I see that the district is having buses out there for, I mean, they're good things. I mean, I'm not saying they're bad, with the census and everybody, came together, the teachers, the buses, the district came together to go out there for the census. But I think to me, it's like, we need to be doing this in all the other areas as well. We can't just hone in on one area, and that's not okay.
May I just answer that?
Yes.
This is
okay with Ms. Fisher.
Just as Ms. Patrica is doing things in her area, this is my area. If you choose to do the same thing in your area, when I asked about the census, and I was told by all of you at the time that go ahead and do whatever you want in your area. The census parade was something that was not initially my idea. The schools and some of the administrators decided they wanted to do a parade, and when we discussed it, they invited me to be a part of it, and it was discussed well, let's make it a census thing as well. Since the areas overlap, the areas they wanted to cover were the same as the hard to count areas for the census. And I will share tomorrow that we actually got national recognition from the census for doing that, and I will share it with everyone tomorrow. So it was a collaborative effort, and it is available for anybody on this board or in any district to come up with whatever ideas that they choose and to see fit to do. And
no, I was just wondering if it was you as an individual or you as the board member that was doing that.
Well, as I'm doing things in my district, it is going to be, I am a board member and this is my district. So if you're talking about getting permission from the board, that's why I said this is exploratory. Activities that we do, I don't see that that's a necessary thing to ask, the board members. So we can.
No, just a question, and congratulations. And my other question would be the small committee groups. Are they somewhere, because I watch all the task force, is there a place where we can go and watch those that are taking place? So that way we're.
Like I keep saying, this is the first time that I am.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Gittens. Okay, Ms. Jordan, that question is for Mrs. Vaughn, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Or whomever, or staff or whoever can answer that question for me.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Vaughn.
It is a virtual meeting. I believe, I'm about 99% sure that it's not going to stream live, but I believe it will be available on the YouTube. I'll tell you what, after it happens, I'll send an email to the board.
Thank you.
But I believe that's the information that it will be available on YouTube, but not streaming live.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Jordan, then do you have other comments for the good of the?
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you.
That's it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I see that, Mrs. Giovanelli, you have your hand up. Do you have something for one of the previous?
Just what Ms. Gittens, and I can say it in my comments, so I'll just save it for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Now we have Ms. Patrica.
Thank you. So this question is for Dr. Atkins, and you don't have to answer me right now, but I do think that we all need to be paying attention to, not we all need to be, that's like me telling you guys what to do, and I don't mean it to come across that way, but what information are we relying on when it comes to rates? Ms. Vaughn referred to rates, COVID rates in Lee County and in Florida, and I'm not sure I personally cannot rely on the news as an accurate source for anything right now. So, you know, what is our partnership with the DOH? What is our partnership with Lee Health? What information will we as a district be relying on as we make these decisions going forward? And again, Dr. Atkins, I don't want that information right now, but if we could all have a reliable, legitimate, official source for this information, I think it would be helpful for us as we move forward, getting these recommendations from subcommittees and hearing the plans that come from staff. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I understand the question, and I can provide you some information right now since you asked the question. You know, we do have the Department of Health, Lee County Department of Health, and also officials from Lee Health that are on our pandemic task force. Staff additionally reached out to both the Department of Health and Lee Health and had a subcommittee meeting early today. I haven't had an opportunity to get with staff in terms of the outcome of that particular meeting, but anyway, that's yeah. Now I'm getting a text that we're having a meeting with Lee Health and DOA also on Wednesday. So in terms of where we get our information, I believe our best source of information are from the experts in the field. And so that would be the Department of Health, as you all know, are responsible for tracking these cases. And Lee Health is, of course, our major healthcare provider here in Lee County. So those are the people that we rely on, I think, for information. Now, Lauren had been on a regular meeting with Lee Health that actually goes clear back to the beginning. So we've been in touch with them in one way or another through this whole thing, and then formalized that through our pre-K to 12 pandemic task force.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Atkinson. And I think that's one of the things that we are going to find ourselves combating quite a bit, which is inaccurate information that's either on social media or in the news. And that's why I think it's important for us as a governance team to make sure that we have a reliable source to go to just on a regular basis to either raise concerns or to allay fears, whatever the facts support in terms of a reaction. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me see. Ms. Morgan, you have your hand up. Yes.
Yes, in addition to what Ms. Patrica just said, I think it would be helpful if on our website we identified who our sources are, and when there are number updates, that they be updated on the website with attribution. Thank you.
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you very much. Okay. So now, Ms. Giovanelli, it's your turn. Please unmute, Ms. Giovanelli.
Sorry. So to piggyback off of what Ms. Gittens and Ms. Jordan were talking about earlier, I think anything we can do with the census, and especially in the undercounted areas, I think is great. And I think we really, need to embrace that. And especially if somebody wants to take the initiative like Ms. Gittens and do that, I think that it's an area that it was missed in 2010. So I think it's important that we make sure every head is counted in the East Zone. So I think it's important. Second, back to the COVID aspect, this would be for Dr. Atkins. Are we going to even get an update? Because I know a lot of like Target and Publix have all went public when they've had their employees, and I don't think we've done that. And we do have employees that have been tested positive, because I'm seeing that people are testing positive, but they're not really, being hospitalized. And I think that that's important to know. I mean, that people don't even know they're ill. There's no fever, so everybody's different. So it's important to note that we are acknowledging that we've had employees that have been ill. So and they'll be back to work in 15 days or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So I believe that that's important. It's just part of being transparent, like Publix did, and Target and Walmart and all the other, Amazon, everybody that's came forward and said they're, they've had a couple employees. We certainly don't have an outbreak, but I think it's important to let the community know that, because I'm in fear that some employees will work and infect others and really not know it, or it's a little late and then not tell their coworkers that they might have tested positive at some point, or or that they were. So that would be my concern. I like the daily update that we get with the numbers that Ms. Stillwell has been giving us, and I do kind of go and check that back to the website that she takes it from, and I think it's that's a good website that comes from I think Tallahassee, from the governor's office, I believe. So we all have to just keep working through this COVID issues and getting our students back to school. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to be very brief and just say that I don't want to be redundant, so I'm going to echo what most of you said. I just want to address the issue that Mrs. Gittens raised with her exploratory meeting. I think that any of us as board members and elected officials who represent our districts can be as active with our community as we want to. And I know that there have been many times when we have an opportunity, it is really good to work with staff, because oftentimes they can expertly answer questions of the community that we may not. And I think that the more we involve our communities, the better we are, because that is part of our strategic plan is, family and community involvement. So we do a lot with our business partners, with our foundation, with the Horizon Council. And I think that whatever we can do in our own districts to enhance that, that's a good thing. And we are running almost a little ahead of schedule, and I appreciate everyone's participation today. And thank you, Ms. Bruno, and everyone else who participated, Dr. Pruitt. So that will be all I will say. It's a pleasure to serve as your chair, and all stay well and healthy. And don't forget to reply to Ms. Bruno regarding your preference about meeting in person. Okay, then Ms. Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have anything else to add, except for I just want the board to be aware that most likely there will be an additional workshop, perhaps action meeting in the month of July to address some of these reopening issues. So I just want you guys to be aware of that.
Thank you very much. And then Dr. Atkins.
Again, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. I know we had scheduled to have a meeting this morning with the Department of Health and Lee Health. That may have not happened. Like I said, I haven't had an opportunity to talk to Lauren and get an update, but she did send me a text that they are trying to put together a meeting on Wednesday. So we'll keep you posted. And then in addition to that, we'll certainly look at Board Member Giovanelli's request, because we are starting to see employees, students, and we try, like I said before, we try to report that to the board, but we also will need to notice, I think, employees, particularly if they're in the area impacted, which I believe we did over the weekend in our case here. So I will certainly take that suggestion under advisement, and we'll bring you back what we intend to do reporting moving forward. Thank you. That's all my comments.
Okay. And Dr. Atkins, if I might ask you this question. This morning I asked you a little bit about that, that I had heard that there were some positive cases. And I think what you said was that you asked for medical backup for that and documentation from those people. Did I understand that correctly?
When we have a case where we know someone has tested positive for COVID, that they're going to be isolated for a period of time, and in order for them to come back into the workforce, they have to, I believe, and I don't have it in front of me, so if I misquote this, forgive me, I'll get you the accurate information, but I believe they have to have, medical verification of 2 negatives before they can come back. So, but anyway, that's part of our guidance that we put out to our employees and the supervisors that went out from human resources, so that our employees and also our supervisors know the expectations relative to anyone who does test positive. When we do have a test where we have an impact at the workplace, we do, of course, send people in for deep cleaning. I think you're aware of that as well. And that is happening very quickly so far, so I've been really pleased with that. In the case of the elementary school, they were there that evening. And again, I think in the case of district office, it was also a very rapid response.
Thank you very much, Dr. Atkins. Okay, board members, I do see 2 hands up. So let's take 2 minutes each, Ms. Gittens and then Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you. I only need 1 or less. I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Atkins just said. I think we owe it to the public, especially with us starting sports and the upcoming graduations in a few weeks, that we need to be able to inform people so that they can make informed decisions as to whether they or their family or their children want to participate in activities that we're having.
Thank you very much. And now Ms. Giovanelli.
Actually, this question is for Dr. Atkins. So like if an employee is exposed during work related, and how does that play out with their vacation time? Because I mean, they have to be quarantined for 15 days and then the 2 tests, negative tests, if that's more than 15 days. So how does that fare, out for the employee? I just thought about that you raised my thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, there's a couple things that would be considered. First of all, we do have some emergency family medical leave that employees are able to avail themselves of. So that is also part of the guidance that we put out to our employees. We do also have, they also have their own personal and sick leave, and I understand that's a concern. But the good news is that we have, there's other options that have recently become available at this point. And then the other thing that we have the ability to do in many cases, that person may be able to continue to work remotely, so they can continue to work even if they're under a quarantine position. And that's where we are today with what we can do under our current collective bargaining agreement and our policies that we have in place. But I also know that Human Resources is continuing to work on this situation as we get deeper into this, and we're going to have more and more employees that are impacted. What you raise is going to become probably more prevalent in the organization, and that's going to be a concern for our employees. So I know they're working on that problem as we speak, as we are across other districts in the state of Florida. I mean, right now we have what we have available to us, but we're working on potential for other options in the future.
Thank you. That's very important. Okay, then, seeing no other business come before this board, this workshop is concluded, and everyone have a safe and healthy evening. Thank you.